What David read from Colossians, it's like reading somebody else's mail. And in that letter, there's advice from Paul or one of his disciples. And it's a wonderful thing to reflect on in this in-between week between Christmas and New Year's. It gives us strong advice about what we're supposed to wear. It says, clothe yourself with love, which binds everything in harmony. Well, that was our fourth candle of Advent, wasn't it? Clothe yourself with love, which hold things together in harmony. Then he says, and let the peace of Christ be in your heart. He says, rule in your heart. And that's one of our early blue candles in Advent. Peace and love. So we've got the first and the last of Advent. And so then he encapsulates that in a beautiful phrase. He says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. So here we are in this in-between time, wondering, what does that mean, the word of Christ? Is that like all his teachings? Is that what the word is? St. John's Gospel, of course, as we heard at Christmas time, talks about the word being Christ. And here we have this interesting lesson for us. Let the word of Christ dwell in you. And so we ask ourselves, what have we brought to this Sunday from Advent that will help us? Dwellings. Well, we had a lot about dwellings, didn't we, in Advent? We talked about two in particular. One was the inn, and we wondered, whose inn was it? Why were they so busy? What was going on? That was one of the big dwellings we talked about. The second, of course, is the dwelling place, however crude, that is that barnyard we refer to in the scriptures as the manger. Those were the two dwellings we mainly thought of, but there were a couple of others around that story at both ends. First of all, the dwelling place that Mary went to Elizabeth to visit early in her pregnancy. Scholars have suggested she went there for her own safety. St. Luke interprets it beautifully, giving us the opportunity to hear the Magnificat. And then following in the story that St. Matthew tells, which is very different, of course, than Luke, but we hear of another dwelling when the Holy Family leaves as refugees. So dwellings are a big part of Advent, and in fact will continue to be throughout the story of Jesus, because he is such a homebound, a homely kind of rabbi that he often visits people in their home. And his invitation, say to Zacchaeus, I'm going to be with you, to come into their homes was one of Christ's big gifts. And in fact, still, for Christ to come into our homes, both figuratively and literally, is the gift of a lifetime. It's difficult, isn't it, to be through into another COVID Christmas. I know we had hoped in August that it would not be the case, but variants seem to have a will beyond our predicting. And so we're being safe here by having our service live streamed. We do that with such reluctance because we know we need each other. We need to see each other, because this house of God is another one of our dwellings, and an important dwelling for the people, whether it be the ancient temples that Christ referred to and visited, or those humble houses that were half tent, half house, that he knew so well thousands of years ago, or our own apartments, our own suites, even the tents downtown. Our dwellings include this beautiful ancient sanctuary. We get a beautiful word when we're invited to let the richness of Christ dwell in us, pitch a tent inside of us, find a place to be a sanctuary within us. It is a profoundly beautiful image with which to start the year. How can we do that? To enlarge our hearts to be big enough to welcome in the word of Christ, the words of love, justice, equality, and even words of dinner together and humor and friendship, words of being tired, words of prayer. How can we make room inside of us, inside of our busyness and our year, for that, the word of Christ to dwell richly within us? Because we've done some good work this Advent. I do believe Advent Christmas, we did good work. We've prepared ourselves, we've welcomed others, we prepared a place for that little Christ child to be born. We've known how to share. We had one whole Sunday about how much is enough, and another one based on, for everyone born, a place at the table. We worked hard on that as a congregation to reach out, to see that as much as any one of us and all of us together, we've tried to make room for everyone, although each week we said we know no one church can do it all. And now, on tiptoes, on Christmas Sunday, we looked into that manger and we saw that baby. We had a beautiful doll here at the front with brown skin, unlike most of the ones we've seen all of our lives, a little Celtic Jesus. So now we're at this new phase. And wherever we are, either in Luke or Matthew or even St. John, we know the time has come to start putting away Christmas. There's a beautiful poem by Howard Thurman, African-American theologian and poet, and it's been put to music any number of times, but the poem itself is very simple. It's called The Work of Christmas. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people, to make music in the heart. That's what it means to invite Christ to dwell in us, to allow the work of Christmas to be part of our agenda going forward. And so now, actually, the work does begin. In the biblical story, we'll hear about this toddler, then we'll hear about him again as a preteen, and it's an exciting story, watching Jesus, full of grace, grow in front of us. And so that's the indwelling. We see that, and we see it in our own kids and family and friends, and even strangers. We see them grow up in front of us and have moments where we see the Spirit in them, showing us the wonderful gifts they've come to earth to share. And so it's like that old song, it takes a community to raise a child, and so it takes a community to keep telling the Christ story. It takes a community to keep saying that these values that we heralded through Advent are truly the moral compass for our lives, even after the baby has grown up. That's the work of Christmas. So back to St. Paul. His candles would have been different than ours, but certainly beautiful. St. Paul asks us to think of certain values, certain spiritual values, as we go into the new year. He says, you can put these on. You put them on and they'll keep your heart warm in the cold days ahead. And he lists them as compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. So in the light of Colossians, can we light a candle for any one of those values, but perhaps most predominantly a candle of compassion as we endure under the pandemic's stresses? Candles of kindness and humility. Beautiful images for us to hold and to imagine putting on those values. Well, Howard Thurman wrote a poem about that. He said, I will light candles this Christmas, candles of joy despite all sadness, candles of hope where despair keeps watch, candles of courage for fears ever present, candles of peace for tempest-tossed days, candles of grace to ease heavy burdens, candles of love to inspire all my living, candles that will burn all the year long. St. Paul asks us to put them on as values. We would love to be engaged by his challenge, to be changed by his spiritual gifts, to remind us of compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. On behalf of all of us here at First Metropolitan, however you go into the new year, we send our blessings and love into it with you, that we are all clothed with the word of Christ. Amen.